So, welcome to Hughes of the World, episode 18. Today, we're going to be talking all about the Central American country of Belize, nee British Honduras. Who have we got today? We got Jeremy Goff is here saying evening. Have we all voted? Yes, everyone voted. We've got Pineapple Boy saying hello, and also British Honduras today. Adrian Wilson says, wondering whether Belize is a private fiefdom of the Tory party and its patrons. Glad it can't be as depressing as Belgium was. No, nowhere near. It's got a bit of darkness in there, but generally speaking, so I'm going to be props together. There's $2 Belizean there. I'll leave that there for everyone to look at and go, ooh, there's some money on the table. Actually pulled it out from the other side of the table. I noticed it the other day. Right, who else have we got? We've got Chubai says, another place that the elite British people like to keep their money. So not to fund British armed forces and other stuff. Yep. What I care about more, education, healthcare, infrastructure, public transport, all that stuff. You know, workers' rights, universal basic income. Oh, I've already got a $10. I got a $10 super chat from Cricket. Thank you very much, Cricket. You are a legend, and glad you made it. I love Belize. I love Belize as well. So I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be nice to Belize. I'll try and be fair, but I do love the bones of the place, I've got to admit. So I won't be going off on one about sort of tax havens and stuff because, well, is it? Yeah. It's not the most interesting thing about Belize by any means. Is Belize the place where the most super patriotic British Brexiteers want to live? Yes, Adrian. Yes, it is. They would like Belize to join the UK Union, so they can all go to Belize and stay there for as long as they like, I guess. Currently, piggy bank for the rich. It's not. Well, yeah. Do you know what country it has the most money laundering going on in the world right now? This one, not Belize. This one. the good old UK. Should we start without Graham, said Chubai about 5 minutes ago. Yes, maybe. Let's get the map up, says Chubai. What's going on? Belize was founded on a Tuesday. That's good to know. In 1981, I guess. No, we got independence in 1981. Adrian Wilson, how much Belize does it cost if I want to buy it outright? Would I need to go to Tory Party HQ, Michael Ashcroft? Yeah, probably. Pineapple Boy says, Belize is named after Mayan for muddy water, one of the main rivers there. Thank you, Pineapple Boy. You've pointed out something that I wanted to bring up. So basically, the blues singer, the great blues singer, Muddy Waters, could have been called Belize because it comes from Belix, which is the Mayan word for muddy waters. Also, you know where I'm from, don't you? Liverpool, which literally means muddy waters. So, Belize, Liverpool, muddy waters, all called muddy waters. That would be a great question for QI, wouldn't it? It'd be like, what these things got in common. It's like the four things, and they have to say, the muddy water. To find somewhere else in the world that's basically called muddy water. I've got Liverpool, Belize, just need one more, and then you can put Muddy Waters up, and you say, well, actually, Muddy Water was the only one who wasn't really called Muddy Water. Or was he? I don't know. Someone check. Graham is joining us. Yes, I'm here. 8 others have joined and liked the stream. Yay! Belize is fun, and they are trying to appeal more and more to tourism and diving and such in Key Kulka. Yeah, you're right. Numeric Attic. They're really going for the tourism thing, but they're going for the eco-tourism thing. And I love that. It's really cool. Like, they're looking after the environment. The same thing they do in Costa Rica and the same thing they do in Panama. Not to the same extent, perhaps, as Costa Rica. Costa Rica's really good at it. It's the gold standard. But they're looking after the environment there, as far as I know. And, it's not overpopulated. There's lots of virgin rainforest there. It's just a cool place. Damn, so do you have a muddy building? In muddy Liverpool? No, it was called the Muddy Pool. If you come out of the old tunnel from Birkenhead into Liverpool, you come out into the little roundabout and you've got the Old Well Museum there, you've got the library and William Brown Street. That roundabout is where the old pool of Liverpool once was. It's now underground. Also, they finally legalised, decriminalised weed up to 10 grams, which is good for the economy and tourism, I think. Well, yes, something else that they decriminalised recently is the Belize flag. No, not the flag, which is this. I'm sorry, I just got to show it full screen. Oh my God, it's just beautiful, isn't it? Just fantastic, isn't it? Maybe I should make this my background. I'm not sure, but essentially, it's just a work of art. It's and quite remarkable that this country, Belize, homosexuality was illegal. It was illegal until 5 years ago. 5 years ago, they finally made it legal to be gay. Although they've had this flag for ages, and it's the gayest flag in the world. Let me just take you through the flag here, because it's quite a remarkable piece of work. So essentially, you've got two half-naked men wearing white pants, which is just freaking epic, I guess. And then you've got this ring of the little Pac-Men around there, the green Pac-Men. That's actually leaves around there. Sorry, it's not like particularly well done by me, my rendering. But yeah, it's just a really cool flag. What is going on? It looks like a dinner plate. And also it's got a lot going on here. It's got these two guys, and they're standing over this shield, which has an oar and an axe and a mallet and a two-handed sword. But underneath here is this amazing. There's a ship. There's a ship there, which is sailing on a rainbow sea, a rainbow-coloured sea. I mean, look, it says Sub Umbra Florio, which is actually Latin for "we flourish in the shade," which is nice, and also true of cacao, or like chocolate. It flourishes in the shade, under the bigger trees. Anyway, so the country with the gayest flag in the world only allowed people to be gay 5 years ago, and it wasn't even a government thing. It wasn't a government policy, a government law. It wasn't a referendum. It was actually the High Court. They found that having a rule saying that you weren't allowed to be gay was against the Constitution. That's why it pays to have a written Constitution, because then you say, hang on. Check this out. Anyway, so that's good. Now, it's a really small country. It's really small. It's only 390,000 people live there. Teeny little country. And as a size of the country, it's a little bigger than Israel, a little smaller than Djibouti. It is a population. It's got the lowest population density in Central America. And Belmopan, the capital, which is brought the two words Mopan and Belize smushed together to make the word Belmopan. It's an invented new city that they just made up. Only 12,000 people live there. I mean, it's a village. It's the smallest capital city in the world. And I was thinking about, actually, no, but Tuvalu, Kiribati, but they're not cities, you see. The capitals of those countries are not cities. So this is the smallest capital city in the world. Arguably, Vatican City is the capital and the city. But, you know, for the sake of this, we're going to go with 12,000. And arguably, Vatican City has more than 12,000 visitors in a day, any given day. So I was thinking about that today, actually. You know, it says in the Bible that you're not supposed to work on Sundays, and that's why everyone's funny about working on a Sunday. Yeah. Priests get paid, don't they? Hashtag just saying. Something else you're not allowed to do on a certain day of the year in Belize, apparently. They don't like you. They tell you not to swim on Good Friday. If you've ever been in Belize on Good Friday, they'll say don't swim. It's the thing they say to kids, like tradition, superstition, I don't know. But apparently you might turn into a fish, which gotta love it. The language there is English, and as I did this, I think I did this both times I went to Belize, because both times I came over from Guatemala into Belize and arrived in a place called Punta Gorda in the south. And both times I went, hola, and the woman who stamped me in just looked at me and went, we speak English here. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes, you do. Sorry, I've been speaking Spanish for the last God knows how long. But yes, you do speak English. That's great. But however, people do speak Creole there. They do speak Spanish as a second language. Also Garifuna, which I'm going to talk about the Garifuna people because I find them really interesting. And I actually stayed in a Garifuna village just over the water from Punta Gorda. It was part of Guatemala, but let's talk about them later. And also Mayan. People still speak Mayan there because they're Mayans. Their currency is the dollar, which has got the Queenie on it, as you can see that on the screen. And $2 is worth $1. Two Belize dollars is worth $1 American dollar, and that's just the exchange rate. That's the exchange rate. Live with it. It's set. So across Belize, it's got 900 Mayan sites. Mayan sites, sorry. And most of them weren't found until the 1980s when they had satellite technology and they started taking photos of the jungle. And they went, oh, there's one. Oh my God, there's hundreds. And they found like 600 of them, which is really cool. It is the old capital, actually, of the Mayan Empire. Did I say Mayan? It's pronounced Mayan. I don't know why they put that first A in there. It's completely superfluous, but we will just march on. And it's also got the only jaguar reserve in the world. That's why they keep jaguar cars and they just fight against each other. No, really, jaguars. Also, something I think is pretty cool, and I tried to look up whether this is still the case, but when I went there was no Starbucks, no McDonald's, no KFC, no Burger King, not even a Wendy's or a Wimpy or a Carl's Jr. or nothing. Great. Which is really cool as well. And in 1971, famed underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau, played by Bill Murray in the film The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. They found this circle. I'll show you on the map. It doesn't look that good on Google, but they found this the blue hole, which is it's a hole. It's a sinkhole in the middle of the in the middle of the water, and it's just perfectly round. It's incredible, and you can swim down there. It's about 110 meters down, apparently. In 1971, that was found, and then when Queen Elizabeth II visited Belize, she was served with one of the country's finest delicacies. It's something called gibnut meat, gibnut or gibnut, and gibnut meat is it's referred to as the royal rat. It's actually a rodent. Apparently, it tastes like rabbit. There you go. Okay, on to the geography. Oh, I'll just do some messages here. Where's Belize on the map? Did I miss that? A globe could be useful. Hang on, Richard. Just keep your hair on. I'm about to get to the map. Duke Venture says, I also flourish in the shade. Oh, it's a nice way to be, isn't it? Hadaboo. Where's Hadaboo? It's a small capital city. I don't even know where Hadaboo is, mate. Jobai said, surely the Sabbath mentioned in the Bible is Saturday as well. Who am I to argue with the will of God? Doctor Who was from there, was from Belize. Doctor Who was from Belize? Gallifrey. He was from Gallifrey. Or she was from Gallifrey. They were from Gallifrey. I thought Doctor Who was Gallifreyan. Glacio kiss. Belize has the second largest coral reef in the world behind the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. That's true as well. That's what I was going to mention, but you've done it for me. Richard Prosser says, I used to dream about a black jaguar as a child. I'm not sure what it meant, but I suspect... Oh, yeah, I got cut off there. Hadibou is not a capital. The capital of Yemen is Sana'a, says Pineapple Boy, which is very true. Right. Should we get into the map? Shall we? Shall we have a look at the map? Okay. Let me just bring it up on my screen so you can see what I mean when I bring it up on my screen. See, I'm just having to deal with really crap internet here. So you just got to bear with me sometimes while I wait for things to happen. Here we go. It's map time. Boo! So there we go. There's the map of the world, of the entire planet. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So today we're going to go and have a look down here. So just get your bearings. There's Africa, right? There's the UK. There's Greenland, there, which is tiny compared with Africa. Don't let Makata tell you what that is. There's Antarctica, in case you're ever lost. You're stuck in Antarctica. There's South America. There is North America. And then in between the two, if I zoom in, which I will, we will find... Oh, that's Ginger Island. We'll find Belize. There it is. This is Belize, and they say you better Belize it, which, you know, I wasn't going to make that joke because everyone does it, but I just realized I just did. So, you'll notice that it's next to Guatemala. It shares a border with Guatemala, although Guatemala would prefer it shared less of a border with it, I think, or more of a border, something like that. And over here, we have the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. There's Mexico City just being obscured by the Belize sign there. I'll move that over. There you go. Mexico City. And up here is Merida. When I talk about Mexico, I might wax lyrical about Merida. It's amazing. It's a lovely city. I love Merida. And Cancun in Mexico is a bit crap. Anyway, so let's zoom in on Belize. Right, first things first. See this line here, which comes down this side. It's not straight. It stops here. It's being straight, and then it turns about 5-degree angle, and then it comes down here, and then it bumps along a little river down here, and obviously it's all staggered down here. This border is disputed. It's disputed by Guatemala. who think that they should have all this area up to this line. See this river here that I'm moving, right? All the stuff south of that line is what Guatemala has a claim over. We'll be talking more about that later. So zoom in a bit more. There's Belmopan, the tiny little capital city. There's Belize City, which you might think was the capital of Belize, but it isn't. That's the original site of the original colony in British Honduras, Belize. But it was destroyed in a hurricane in 1961. And so they relocated the entire city centre, the entire capital city, to Belmopan, which is just in the middle of the jungle a little bit. Up in the north here, we have Orange Walk. I'll just zoom in there. And that's where Lamanai, the Mayan city of Lamanai is on Orange Walk. And you need to take a boat along the river to get there. Absolutely beautiful. Really, really recommend it. When I bring my background back up, I think you'll be able to see a little shot from Orange Walk that I got when I was there of the Jaguar Temple. And then if we go down the country, you find a place called Fat Point or Punta Gorda, which is here, Punta Gorda. And Punta Gorda is basically how you get there. If you're coming from Guatemala, you get a boat over from Puerto Barrios. You can see it in the bottom right of your screen. And the boat goes over to Punta Gorda. Takes about an hour, actually. It takes it quite long. And along the way, there is a town down here called Livingston, just there on the mouth of the river. I stayed in Livingston with it's a Garifuna tribe who live there in Livingston. And there's no road. There's no road to Livingston. You have to get the boat. So what I did was I got the boat from Puerto Barrios, stayed in Livingston for the night, and then the next morning I went up to Punta Gorda. I got told off for speaking Spanish when I should have been speaking English. So over here we have the barrier reef, which has been mentioned by Chubai, I think. If we go into the other mode, the satellite view, you can actually see the reef here. This is the second largest reef in the world after the Great Barrier Reef. It might be the largest soon because the Great Barrier Reef is half dead already. Well done, humans. And if I zoom in here, you might be able to see the great dot, the great hole. There it is. This wonderfully circular hole. Actually, the name comes up, the Great Blue Hole. Unfortunately, the pictures of it aren't particularly great, I guess. The satellite image is not that great. But if you pull up some pictures of it, it is really quite beautiful. The Great Blue Hole. There you go. And lots and lots of islands. There's hundreds of islands, 400 islands or something off the coast of Belize, and it's a fun place to play, and it's pretty cheap as well. It's not a particularly expensive country. I didn't find it particularly expensive. Someone's going to correct me here and go, Graham, you're a fool. It's so expensive. It made my eyes water, and I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't find it when I was there. But then again, I was staying, couch surfing and stuff, so I wasn't staying in no 5-star resorts. Right, back into the messages here. We've got. I wasn't sure what that meant. Oh, the black Jaguar. Was it a car? A black Jaguar car, or an actual black Jaguar, as in the cat? What's this map thing you're mentioning tonight? I thought it was called a mappy map. Yes, it is called a map. I said that. Anyway, this is Orange Walk behind. Well, it's not. It's Lamanai, which is down the river from Orange Walk, and that's actually me. see the little figure right above my head there. There, that's me. Out of focus, because I make my backgrounds slightly out of focus to make them look more depth, Adrian Wilson, Belize have to date won 0 Olympic medals and 0 Commonwealth medals. No wonder Andy Wigmore represented them once. But they have got a population of less than Liverpool. Of less than the city of Liverpool. So, I think for a while, and someone might want to check this, I think the country that had the most gold medals per capita was Grenada for ages, because they had this one athlete who was just bloody amazing and won loads of medals and cleaned up. And so per head of population, the number one country for winning medals was Grenada. Someone should check that up. You can check that up if you like. Anyway, so there's The reef actually extends for more than 180 miles along the coast, and it's a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's protected, which is good, and it isn't dying like what the Australian Great Barrier Reef is, just dying at the moment at a horrific rate. Okay, so time for a little bit of a deep dive into the history of Belize. So the Maya basically ruled the place from around 2000 BC to around 1500 AD-ish. But the archaeological findings that are found signify that, look like Belize is the oldest part of the Mayan Empire. Is the oldest settlements to be found in Belize. Now the Maya, we can't really see it as one homogeneous thing. It was divided into lots of kingdoms, lots of different regions, areas, sometimes thousands of miles away from each other. They had complex trade routes between each other and complex diplomatic negotiations, things going on, and squabbles, lots and lots of squabbles. But they were tended to be all in the same way that different European countries may have the same religion, but they have different languages. Well, the Mayans had different languages depending on which tribe they were part of. But they did have some similarities to each other, like similar religion and similar gods. And the way that the sort of social and economic life was split into a strict hierarchy with the king or the high lords at the very top, and then you had the priests, the warriors, and the scribe class, and then underneath then you had the artisans and the traders, the wheeler dealers, the del boys, and underneath then you had the unskilled labourers and the servant workers. Not much has changed in the world, because that sounds like Great Britain to me at the moment. What am I saying? Anyway, so in 562 AD, there was a guy called the Water Lord of Caracol. And Caracol is really important Mayan city that is in what is now Belize. Now, Caracol, the Water Lord defeated King Double Bird of Tikal, which is in Guatemala. So the guy in Belize had a fight with the guy in Guatemala. Obviously, these things didn't exist at the time, and then it looks like King Double Bird sacrificed the old Water Lord of Caracol. Sorry, King Double Bird. Got that the wrong way around. Let's do that again. Take two. So anyway, the Water Lord of Caracol beat Double Bird and then sacrificed King Double Bird on an altar, pulled his heart out in front of a crowd. Nice. Might be where the simmering tensions between Belize and Guatemala first began. Who knows? Anyway, so Caracol became the dominant city of the Mayan world, became the capital of the Mayan world. And it was a major urban metropolis. So I just told you that the population of Belize isn't even 400,000, yeah? Well, Caracol had a population of 100,000 1,500 years ago. So, yeah, it was huge. Anyway, but the Mayan population at of Belize at about the time of the Spanish conquest was around 250,000. And this was quickly decimated by 90% by Spanish greed and Spanish disease. Wiped them out. But there are still Mayans around today, still keeping to the old ways of doing stuff. Not so many sacrifices these days, but they were a good bunch. In the 1540s, a conquistador force based in Yucatan set out to find gold in what's now Belize, and they travelled down the coast and across the central highlands, and they left a trail of slaughter, mayhem, and destruction in their wake. They didn't find any gold. Anyway, so places like religious sites such as Lamini, which is in Orange Walk, which is the place behind me, the people there were forcibly converted to Catholicism. But then the Spanish didn't hang around. They sort of left. And the Mayans kind of just, they just got on with stuff. In the early 1600s, the Mayans staged a counter offensive, and they managed to drive out the few Spanish settlers and missionaries who were actually in what's now Belize. There wasn't that many people there. But they didn't return to the old cities, and instead they just sort of retreated into the jungle and lived in tribes rather than in the old cities. They just left them. Anyway, so obviously in 1492, Columbus had come over the ocean, and there was a treaty in 1494 called the Treaty of Tordesillas. I think I'm saying that probably wrong. Tordesillas. Silas. Oh, it's double L, isn't it, in Spanish? So it must be Yaz. Let's say Tordesillas. Anyway, this treaty of 1494 basically established that all of the New World area was owned by the Iberian Peninsula, so Portugal and or Spain. They explicitly excluded like England, the Netherlands, France, anyone else. You're not allowed to come to the New World and do anything, which explains a few things. First of all, the fact that when the British did go over, they went to the Caribbean because they were like, well, this isn't taken. And also, up north, when they eventually decided to settle in America years later, they sent them a long way further up north, away from all of what's now Latin America. What the British and the Dutch and the French found pretty successful was just sending over pirates to rob stuff off the Spanish and the Portuguese. They found this very successful. So you had British buccaneers, you had French corsairs, and you had Dutch freebooters. In the time of war, these people were called privateers. But outside of war, they were just pirates. And Belize, which is not Belize, so where Belize City is the end of a river called the River Belize, and that's why we get the name Belize, because it's muddy waters. They set up in what's now Belize City, and Belize and other Caribbean outposts became, ground zero for Britain's piratey marauders, raping and pillaging and doing evil deeds, stealing loads of money off the Spanish and the Portuguese. So these English sea dogs, they would use this outpost as a staging point for attacking Spanish commerce, and from therefore the Brits who settled in or used it as a staging post in Belize City. It wasn't a city back then. It was just called Belize, just this little tiny bit. It wasn't the whole country. They were known as the Baymen because they attacked out of the Bay of Honduras. Belize was great for pirates. I mean, the land was bountiful and uninhabited because the Spanish had been driven out, and the Mayans had disappeared into the interior. It was a short sail from the Yucatan Straits, and it was easy to get access to things like the treasure fleets coming out of Havana, the silver train, which used to come up from South America to Panama on mules. It was a good time. It was a good time to be a pirate. And the shoreline also, it had these thick mangroves, which are always good for hiding behind. I know this because I own an island that is surrounded by mangroves. And the little islands and the reefs provided shitloads of cover for the pirates, because they could get their little ships into these little areas, and the Spanish couldn't get their big, massive galleons in because they'll just run onto a reef. So they had to keep a distance. Anyway, but 1638 is the official date for the founding date for the British settlement on the mouth of the Belize River. Scottish pirate. Hello to all my Scottish viewers tonight. I hope you all voted today in the election for the Scottish Parliament. Scottish pirate captain Peter Wallace, his name was. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm trying to do it subtly. Organised the building of a new port town, and apparently he founded Belize City. Founded an entire city on wood chips and rum bottles, presumably empty rum bottles. True story. So Where was I? So basically, look, the Baymen, they poached the Spanish king. It wasn't just enough for them to be going out and robbing ships. They also poached the wood that was there. So there was mahogany, which is incredibly valuable, still is, and also logwood trees. Now, logwood trees are trees that you make like a dye extract from it, which was really valuable in making woolen garments. So the woolen textiles industry really wanted this dye that you got from the logwood trees. And so, basically these pirates had this pirate paradise. They had all this food they could just grow. They had all this stuff that they could chop down trees that there was nothing to pirate. And then the ship came past and they went, oh, let's pirate that. They could go and take that. It sounds like a pretty good life, to be honest with you. Apart from maybe the malaria and death. By the 18th century, finally, the 1700s, Britain had a fleet, a merchant and imperial fleet, navy fleet, to rival Spain's. And at that point, the pirates became less of a necessity and more of a nuisance. And in 1765, a Jamaican-based admiral called Admiral Barnaby came to Belize and paid a visit to the rough-hewn Baymen, as they were known, and delivered a code of laws on proper imperial etiquette. I love this. Thieving, smuggling, and cursing were right out. I love that. I love how stealing stuff is like bad, but cursing, I mean, that's really bad. And paying taxes and obeying the sovereign was in. So suddenly this sort of lawless area was brought into the realm of the British Empire, and it was a loose association, but it was to become quite profitable for Britain very, very soon, actually. And I think the more money they made out of the mahogany and logwood and etc., the more they irritated the Spanish king. Anyway, so the Treaty of Paris in 1763, Spain tried diplomacy to try and get this area back because they believed it to be part of the Spanish Empire, which, they had prior dibs on the whole of the land. So it's funny that the two English-speaking parts of Latin America, Guyana and Belize, both have territorial disputes with their neighbours, who still claim that they should have more than half of Belize if you're Guatemala, or half of Guyana if you're Venezuela. Because, the British were never supposed to be there. However, they were there. And this is a fact. And it's just one of those things I think is like, when you have a group of people who live somewhere in the world right now, and you say, do you want to be ruled by this person or this person? And they say, I'd rather be ruled by myself, thank you very much. I think you should let that stand. I just think in this day and age, 2021, just let it stand. But we'll come back to that. The Spain tried diplomacy. They negotiated a deal which said that the Brits could harvest wood, but they had to pay rent to the Spanish king, and also they had to promise not to expand the settlement. So they signed this deal, and then they never paid any money to the Spanish king, and they expanded the settlements like straight away. So in 1779, how many years? I can't add up now. 16 years after the signing of the treaty, the Spanish turned up and burnt down Belize city in a surprise attack. Surprise! It's the Spanish, and they consigned the prisoners they took to slavery in Cuba, which is pretty rum. And then in 1798, the Spanish forces were repelled by the Baymen in the Battle of St. George's Key, which apparently there were no reported casualties on each side, on either side. So, okay, if you say so. But after that, Spain gave up trying to get rid of the Brits in Belize. And also the date of the battle is a national holiday now. In Belize, not in Guatemala, OVS. And in the 19th century, it wasn't until the 19th century that the more modern Belize that we know it now began to take form for various reasons. It was officially dubbed British Honduras, and it was first administered from Jamaica, but later on was a crown colony in its own right with its own royal governor. Belize society was a patchwork of British, African, Mayan and Spanish influences. It was a haven for refugees, but also a labour camp for slaves. Around the year 1800, slaves comprised a good 75% of the population. So there wasn't that many people there. There was only 4,000 people there, and 3,000 of them were slaves, black slaves. 900 were mixed race Mestizos, and 100, only 100 out of the 4,000 were the white colonists, the descendants of the original Baymen. But the Baymen were the top of the pecking order. I mean, at one time, their forefathers, their ancestors were pirates, but now they were aristocrats. They were people in charge of the country, and the Baymen were allowed to have land, and the other people, even when slaves were freed, they weren't allowed to have land. It was just the white Baymen who were allowed to have land, and this sort of elite colonial caste system it kept going well sort of into the early 20th century, well into the early 20th century. In the 1830s, slavery was abolished in the British Empire, and slowly but surely, people who were enslaved in British colonies around the world were finally given their freedom. However, as happened in lots of other places like Barbados and Antigua, a lot of slaves were not given rights after being freed, so they still couldn't buy land, they couldn't own land. And as a result of this, the plight of the Afro-Belizean didn't get much better. They remained completely dependent on the white-dominated economy, and many of them kept doing the jobs that they were doing, and they were paid bugger all for doing it. They were subsistently paid, so they were paid just for their food, which is what they got when they were slaves. But they weren't called slaves anymore. They were called apprentices. Now, a lot of people say, well, not a lot of people. Some people say the experience of the slaves in Belize does not compare with the experience of slaves in places like Antigua, which were sugarcane colonies with thousands and thousands of black Africans brought over from Africa and enslaved there. Compared with numbers and the actual job they had to do, because they were employed in employed is probably a bad word for it. They were forced to cut down trees, mostly in Belize, which is a dangerous job, but it's nowhere near as dangerous as making bloody sugar, right? Sugar is super freaking dangerous, a thing to make, especially 200 years ago. But at the same time, there were 4 major slave revolts between 1760 and 1820, and there was a high annual incidence of runaways. So, I don't think it was that great. I think it was like, it's a bit horrible. It could be even more horrible, but that doesn't stop it being horrible. Anyway, in 1832, a group of Garifuna settled in present-day Dangriga, which is, they came from Honduras, and they settled in this place in Belize, in southern Belize. And they were treated as squatters by the British, the people in charge. But it's funny because the story of the Garifuna is quite interesting. So what happened was there was a massive slave revolt on the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines fame. And the people that was put down by the British and the slaves that had risen up were unceremoniously dumped on the coast of the Mestizo coast of Honduras, in the belief, or perhaps hope, that they would soon perish. But they didn't. In fact, they flourished, and the Garifuna people are still probably one of the few people in the whole of the Caribbean who can actually say that they have Carib blood running through their veins, because they were, a lot of them were mixed race between African slaves and local Caribs who still existed back then. And the Garifuna people moved up. Some of them moved up. Some of them live in Guatemala, like the ones I stayed with, like the people I stayed with in Guatemala. And some of them moved up into what's now Belize. But they were the people who were defeated in the Carib Wars, as they were called. Richard Foster says, I'm off to watch QT, sorry. Yeah, well, this is recorded. You can watch it tomorrow. Glasgow Kiss, I can tell the QT script, Richard. Tory gets to talk too long and a lie without being held to account. Labour says they're going to be better. A racist audience of member gets all airtime. Expert largely ignored. Yeah, Glasgow. That's television is a waste of time. It's like Duke Avengers. Television, the drug of the nation. Actually, I think it's Brexit these days, the drug of the nation. But we're not talking about Brexit today. We're talking about Belize. So, I was just telling you about the Garifuna people. And, and there was another group of people who came to Belize in the 19th century. And they were the Mayans from the Yucatan. At the time... in the mid 19th century, neighboring Yucatan Peninsula, which is now in Mexico, there was an armed conflict that broke out between the Maya and the Mestizos, people who are mixed race, versus the privileged Spanish descended landlords. And the bloody war of the castes raged for over a decade and forced families to flee. And a lot of these refugees came down into Belize, and they more than doubled the Belize population. It was less than 10,000 people lived there in 1845, and it got up to 25,000 people in 1861. So that's less than 20 years, like more than doubled. And it redefined the character of northern Belize. They brought the Hispanic language, they brought corn tortillas, and they brought Catholic Church. The Mayan refugees from Yucatan moved into the northwest Belizean forest area and caused problems for the logging industry. But what's now sort of Orange Walk, that area in the northwest, that's where these Mayans settled down. In response, there was a Crown Land Ordinance in 1872, and it established Carib reserves, which were for the Garifuna, and Maya reserves, which were for the Mayan people, and basically it prevented the Garifuna or the Mayans owning land. In 1872 as well, there was an attack on Orange Walk by the Mayans, and it was a fierce but futile last stand, and many died, and the remaining Maya then survived on the fringes of Belize society from then on until quite recently, actually. Anyway, so Spain and France started losing the most Caribbean possessions in the early sort of 19th century, whereas Britain's island colonies, they kept hold of them until the 1960s. But Belize was a bit slow to embrace the whole independence movement, I feel, which is understandable because there were deep ethnic divisions across the country, as I've explained. You had the Garifuna, you had the Mayans, you had the Hispanics, you had the English, and also you had the Mennonites. Yeah, the Mennonites. You didn't see that one coming, did you? So they were a group of Russians who fled from Russia, and they lived like Amish people, basically. They're Amish people. And they went to Canada, and then they moved down into America, and there's Mennonites in America, and then they moved down through Mexico and settled in Belize. So out in Belize, you'll find Mennonite communities, quite a thriving Mennonite communities. And what's interesting is they're very simple people who live very simple lives and drive around in horses and buggies and things and put up barns. But they don't discriminate. So they allow anyone who wants to be a Mennonite to join their group. So you can actually find people who are either mixed race or black Afro Belizeans who have become Mennonites. And I think the Mennonites speak German. Even though they're from Russia originally. I don't get it. Anyway, but they live there as well. Anyway, so where was I moving to? I was talking about the fact that the independence movement, it was more patient. It was quite resistant, but not like overly so. At the beginning of the 20th century, the old elite were sort of becoming more isolated and less feared than they used to be. And the ties to the old country were becoming less, as in 1900, exports to the US outpaced exports to the UK. And by 1930, the US was taking or buying up 80% of all Belizean exports. Just before then, during World War One, a group of local Creoles were actually taken over to France to fight in World War One. But because of their dark skin, they were not allowed to fight in the front, and they faced horrific discrimination. When they came back, it led to an angry demonstration in 1919 in Belize City at their treatment. It wasn't until the 1930s that a more sustained sort of anti-colonial movement began with this the Unemployed Brigade, who used to meet, I think, every Saturday in Belize City. And they started organising strikes and boycotts and things like that. But it wasn't until the 1950s when we got the People's United Party, or PUP, as I like to call them, and they became politically active. Anti-British demonstrations spread across Belize, and they became more militant and occasionally violent. And a general strike eventually forced Britain to make political concessions. Universal suffrage was extended to all adults, and limited home rule was permitted. The demand for independence didn't go away though, and it grew in the 1960s. And in 1964, the colony became fully self-governing, and they installed a Westminster-style parliamentary system. In 1961, a few years earlier, as Hurricane Hattie, I think it was called, had devastated Belize, killing hundreds of people and destroying Belize City. They had this new inland capital that I've mentioned, Belmopan. And 10 years later, in 1971, that became the capital. In 1973, they changed the name of the country from British Honduras to Belize. And then independence was finally declared in 1981. And it was declared an independent state within the British Commonwealth, hence the Queen on the money. Duke Vengeance says, why watch television when you can have a geography/history lesson with Graham? Yeah, damn right. Thank you, Duke. Jeremy Goff says, Jeff lookalike just said Navy should have sunk the blockade. Gee, gods. Jeremy, don't watch. Question time. It'll just stress you out. just add to your blood pressure. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the history of Belize up to independence. But one thing I haven't really touched upon is the Barney that it's currently having with Guatemala. Okay, so let me explain. Full independence of Belize had been put off until a nagging security matter was resolved. Spain never formally renounced the claim to the territory of Belize. This claim was appropriated by both Mexico in the north and Guatemala to the west and the south in the 19th century. And Britain moved to sign agreements with both claimants to recognise the existing colonial boundaries, which are the boundaries that you see today. But to this day, Guatemala maintains its claim over a large portion, almost 3/4 of Belize, and its rulers seem bloody obsessed with with the perceived wealth of British Honduras. Belize it is now. They just go on about it all the time. And it's typical of a country that is run by a bunch of dickheads, right? Look, the people of Guatemala are absolutely amazing, and I love them. The people in charge of the country have been mostly scumbags. But then, I would just like to say, qualify that, the people who've run my country for the last few years have been unqualified scumbags. So, you know what I mean? It happens. It happens to the best of us, right? But every time they're looking down at the polls and going, oh, no, I'm not doing very well in the polls. Polls as in, opinion polls, not Polish people. They go, I know. Let's go on about the Falkland Islands. Ha ha, let's go on about our claim over Guyana. Let's go on our claim over Belize. Look at them. Look at that thing that should be ours. God, doesn't it make you feel embittered and angry? Join us and we can rise up and get something out of it. Anyway, so look. The whole history goes back to a place called Godolphin, the Godolphin Treaty of 1670, in which Spain confirmed that England was to hold all territories that it already had in the Western Hemisphere, that it had already settled, right? That it already had. However, they didn't define what had been settled. So there was no list. There was no shopping list going, yeah, well, we've got St. Vincent and we've got Grenada and... No. However, under the terms of the Wick Isenina Treaty, I'm probably saying that wrong, of 1859, Guatemala, which was now independent, agreed to recognize British Honduras. And both Guatemala and Great Britain, promised to build a road from Guatemala City to Punta Gorda, Fat Point. However, this road was never built. Although the British apparently did give Guatemala £50,000 towards building it, because they didn't have any agreement on who was paying for it, how it was going to be built, whose labour was going to use it. But the British said, we'll pay for it, you can actually sort it out. The actual building of the road would have been a bloody nightmare, and it's one of the reasons it still hasn't been built to this day, is because you've got to cut through a lot of rainforest, virgin rainforest, and you've also got Mayan tribes who live there, Mayan tribes who live there and probably don't want to move. So yeah, it's problematic for lots of reasons, and it never got built. So how in the Constitution of 1945, Guatemala restated its claim over British Honduras because this road hadn't been built. And I remember when I went there in 2009, I went to Belize, and I was looking at this map before I went over there, where I was in Puerto Barrios, and they have a map, and I've seen these all over Guatemala. It's got Guatemala, and then this big section of Belize. It says Zona en Reclamation or something. It means zone to be reclaimed, zone of reclamation, and they actually regard British Honduras and now Belize as the 13th state or something of Guatemala, which, you know, the people in Belize are like, excuse me, you've never ruled this place, you've never been in charge ever, and you're talking about treaties that are 400 years old, but people live there now and they want to be independent and they want to be cut. Anyway, so since 1954, a succession of military and right-wing governments in Guatemala frequently whipped up nationalist sentiment, generally to divert attention from domestic politics. Sound familiar? It should. In 1975, tensions flared. Guatemala began massing troops at the border. Britain responded by deploying troops along with a battery of 105mm field guns, anti-aircraft missile units, 6 fighter jets, and a frigate. Following this deployment, the tensions were diffused, largely as most of the Guatemalan soldiers dropped their guns and ran away. And actually, Belize was recognised formally by Guatemala in 1991. And it's been recognised by every single country in the UN as an independent state. But the Guatemalan government got new government in. They're like, oh, actually, we take it back. We had our hands behind our back. We were on Bali. You can't get us. In 1999, they said we want this land, and the renewed claim was all the land south of the Sibun River, which is where we're showing you on the map. It's like it's like 2/3. Even more than that. 3/4. It's 3/4 of the bottom of Belize, just leaving a little top bit near Mexico. So this has rumbled on for bloody ages, and the Guatemalans said, right, let's get this resolved in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, and the Belize are like, we'll win, we'll totally win. What? But Guatemala, they had a referendum, and 95.88% of the population, out of a 25% turnout, so I don't think that many people were asked, really, decided, yes, we should definitely go to The Hague. We'll take them to The Hague, and we'll take over Belize, and it'll be great, and we can teach them Spanish, and yay. And then they can have loads of governments that are just lunatics. And in response, Belize held their own referendum, and in 2019, in May 2019, and they found 55.4% of voters actually voted to take the case to the ICJ. They said, "Look, we're going to win. We're gonna win. Just take it. Go on." And what it'll do actually is demarcate the border for the first time ever, because it is at the moment just a line on a map. No one's actually bothered to actually go into the jungle, I don't think, and draw a line, to actually put stones down on the ground or whatever you do to mark borders between countries. I always just imagine them as like, you go there and you see this line and you sort of walk through it and it goes roomph as you walk through it and you're like, wow, it's like a sort of beam of light. oh, I just crossed the border. But that doesn't happen. The ICJ is going to rule. They're going to rule on it. And basically, Guatemala submitted their evidence last year, and Belize has got till next year to submit their evidence by the 8th of June 2022, and then it'll probably take about another 10 years for the ICJ to get back to them. They're very slow-moving beasts. They're a bit like the Ents from Lord of the Rings. And we shall find out if Guatemala can just take the vast majority of Belize or not. Ugh, I don't think they will. Anyway, so, I'll take your advice. Due to my lack of sleep from being a full-time carer, I'm unable to contribute. I hope you don't mind me listening to you while I go to sleep. That's fine. As long as my dulcet tones can send you off to sleep. Jeff Lookalike just said, oh, I saw that. Bat Sub is there too. Price Barracks, Ladyville. Yes. Wait, what? Anyway, George Candle Price was elected the first Prime Minister of Belize, and he served from September 1981 until December 1984. Independence didn't turn out to be a cure-all for all of Belize's ills, but the angry nationalists slowly evolved into accommodating capitalists. They didn't have many exports left, but they managed to suss out a great way of getting imports. Tourists. And through the 90s, they had this rise of the ecotourism. Also, this led to the revival of the Mayan culture, which suddenly became front and center of Belize, finally. Absolutely reshaped contemporary Belize as a result. And in the years following independence, the population of Belize doubled, reaching 321,000 in 2008. And obviously, it's nearly 400,000 now. Belize was an ideal candidate for a green revolution. It was the lowland forests had been largely ignored by loggers. There were sections of the interior highlands that no white man had ever been to. The magnificent coral reefs that needed protection. And obviously you had the Blue Hole, made famous by Jacques Cousteau, of Steve Zissou fame. In the 90s, more than 20 sites from the Western Mountains to the Eastern Keys were designated as national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, forest reserves, marine reserves. More than 40% of Belize territory now has some kind of protective status, and including 80% of its pristine rainforest, which is bloody wonderful. By the end of the 90s, Belize, the tourism sector was its fastest growing sector. And this sort of eco craze also coincided with the deciphering of the Mayan code, so people could actually read what the Mayans were up to. And also NASA taking pictures, like I mentioned earlier, of the jungle and going, oh, look, there's a thing there. There's some Mayan thing there. There's a Mayan thing there. Count them all up. It's 800 of them. 900. Bloody hell. And as a result, the Mayan culture is no longer disparaged and at the fringe of society. It's actually now embraced and a source of pride and a defining feature of Belizean identity. Are you listening, Australia? You should be. Anyway, so yes, the Jaguar King. The Jaguar King has reclaimed his ancient throne, which is really cool. Glasgow says British Army Training Support Unit Belize. Indeed. So just to sign off now, because I've been rabbiting on for an hour. Like I said, I went there in 2009 and I returned in 2014. On the trip in 2014, I spent about a week there and visited a bunch of Mayan sites, including Lamanai, which is actually on the back of the $2 note. So this is worth $1. It's a $2, but it's worth $1. We've got, Lubatan, which is near Punta Gorda. You can get the bus from Punta Gorda to Lubatan. You'll have the place to yourself. We did. And also there's Lamanai, which is up near Orange Walk. And also we have Alton Ha and the Maya ruins of Belize, interestingly enough. So, also the tallest building in the whole of Belize is actually a Mayan temple. How cool is that? Also, Cash Dummy, thank you very much. €5. I'm a great fan of Hughes of the World. Your research is really accurate and interesting. Would love to see Cricket Averett on Discord. Yeah, Cricket, get on Discord. I'll send you a link. Thanks, Graham, for your understanding. It's just that over the last week, my wife's seizures due to her epilepsy have meant I've been up all day and night. Paul, good luck, man. I'm really sorry to hear that, and take care of her and give her all the love in the world, man. Pineapple Boy says, thanks for the day. Always nice to learn new things. Yeah, well, there's a bit of stuff there. But yeah, when I went to Belize, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved the food. I loved the people. I loved the vibe. It just seemed like a laid back place. It's funny because it's got quite a lot of crime, but I didn't see any of that. So I was kind of like, yeah, cool. And the way you got about was on school buses. I got a school bus all the way to all the way to Belize City. I was on the back of a school bus going. I felt like Dustin Hoffman at the end of The Graduate. When I was in Punta Gorda, there's a place called Asher's Restaurant, which is just fantastic. And I remember sitting out there, and there was just like this horrific storm raging all around us, and the rain was crashing down, and they were just cooking. They were just cooking for us. So I felt like the roof was going to blow off, and they're like, no, it's fine. Just, here you go. And just cooked us up some fantastic scran. When I was in Orange Walk, a guy stopped in a pickup truck. I thought, this is a bit dodgy. We got there after dark, and he's like, do you need somewhere to stay? Do you want to get in? And I'm like, do you mind if I don't? He said, look, yeah, okay, I get it. I'm just some random bloke in a pickup truck, but come with me, and you can stay at my place. I've got a guest house. So we were like, where is it? And he says, it's just down the road. You can walk. So we went, okay. So we walked down the road, and we ended up staying at this place for a few days. And the guy who took us in was absolutely brilliant, and an ex-gang member in LA, I think, who had basically legged it from America because he was wanted for various crimes. Loveliest bloke you'll ever meet. And he was very fond of puppies. He had lots of puppies. And we went over to his family owned an island called Dead Man's Island in the local in the nearby river. Just really friendly bloke, really friendly gangster, proper like covered in tattoos, built. Yeah, you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, but thankfully we didn't. Belize City sort of, I mean, it's not the capital anymore, but it's still there's still a lot of stuff there. They rebuilt obviously since the hurricane, and get out on a boat, go and see the Keys, go and see the reef. It is magnificent for all kinds of eco adventures, not just in the jungle, but obviously going scuba diving, all that kind of stuff. I can't recommend it enough. I really do. I mean, if you're traveling around the area, it's really close to the Yucatan Peninsula, which I also recommend you go and visit. And it's also close to Tikal as well in Guatemala, which I really, really recommend you visit because it's absolutely magnificent. And the nearest town is called Flores, and it's actually a little tiny island on a lake, and it is beautiful. It's a place that you need to visit once in your life. So Belize is good for sort of having those trips out to Mexico, out to Guatemala, even down as far as Honduras if you're feeling brave. It's all good. Glasgow Kiss says, all the best, Paul. Being a carer can be tough. And you're absolutely right, mate. You're absolutely right. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. But thank you very much for joining me on this little whirlwind tour of the geopolitical situation in Belize at the moment. And should I score these countries? Can I give Belize 10 out of 10? Because I think it's great. She went 9 out of 10. It's got some problems. Needs to sort them out. But there wasn't Hannon. He represented Belize, didn't he, in the Olympics? So yeah. Nice. So Duke Venger says, I feel like I should be taking notes. So I will return tomorrow at 1:00 for the last Hughes round of the week, and I will be joined by Glasgow Kiss, won't I? Glasgow Kiss, wink, 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 wink. I'm winking. And we'll be talking about the outcome of the election today. So in the UK, we've got local elections. We've also got mayoral elections, so places like Liverpool, Manchester, London. There's elections going on in Wales, and there is elections for the Scottish Parliament in Scotland. And this will be a decisive election because it could be the beginning of the end of the United Kingdom, because Scotland might be going its own little independent way. So by the time I get to E, I might have to do England. I'm not waiting all the time because it's going to take me, 3.5 years to get to U for the United Kingdom. So it might not last that long. So just to hedge me bets, I'm gonna when I get to E, I'm gonna do England. When I get to S, I'm gonna do Scotland. When I get to W, I'm gonna do Wales. So Glasgow, you're gonna be live on air. Yeah, Glasgow says sure. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Thank you for my super chats. Thank you for all my patrons who allow this channel to exist and for me to chunder on as I do. And I'll pop onto the Discord server maybe after this for a little bit. But until then, and until tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I will say fair winds and following seas, traveller.